Man, I'm not sure we want to cover this, but this is the debate with Destiny and Blaire White. It's only 21 minutes. I'm probably gonna head out like within an hour, probably, unless some like major freaking news happens.
Even if I could just
Playback speed. Okay.
get a little vulnerable here for a second. Conservatives don't really see it. They don't really care about trans.
He talks so fast that 1.5 speed is like normal for him. Or 1.5 at 1.5 speed is like 3x speed for him.
Issues when they were trying to ban trans adult care. They see it as kind of like this ideological battleground for, what does it mean to be mentally healthy? What is a woman? What is a man? And that allowing kind of trans people to exist and to access care in this manner challenges kind of those underlying paintings for how they kind of build their foundation of reality. In terms of who is more to blame, in my opinion, I think it was just yesterday, the NHS banned puberty blockers for kids. So it's like, yeah, or to be more precise, I think along with a bunch of other countries, they've gone to making it so if you want to pursue this, it can only be done like in a research setting, essentially. It's no longer like the standard of care for children identified trans. Yeah. I think that something that you mentioned a couple other times, which has made these conversations so difficult, is it seems like people on the left don't really care anymore about whether or not there is like the fact of the matter if a person is trans or not. But a lot of the conversation has kind of shifted over to this self-ID thing, which is it is, I was going to say in my opinion, but it's not about it. It's a totally incoherent and ridiculous position that you can like ID as a thing and then you are that thing. Like that wouldn't work for any other category ever in the history of anything ever.
True. Yeah, we did touch upon this very briefly in the conversation I had a few days ago with Hannah, but I don't think that we I don't think that we I think there was a miscommunication. I don't think that we were talking about the same thing when I brought up the self-identification thing. I think there was like a bit of a disconnect in what we both thought that meant. But yeah, it does seem to me that if trans people are real, it's probably by definition, it's a medical phenomenon. It's thinks that they were born in the wrong body, right? It's a mental condition where they believe that they are born in the wrong body and they have like dysphoria because of that. And if they want to get help, they want to get treatment, like and so there should be things that we do as a society, probably, or as the healthcare system, or as whatever, to like try and help these people like live good lives. And it doesn't seem like this idea of just telling them like, oh, well, get over it. You're not a man or woman. Like, I don't think that that's very effective, or doesn't seem like it is. Now, if studies turn out that there's like a way to swap to make it so that that is like, and that's what people want to do, then great. Um, but right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. Right now, it seems to be the case that we don't really have good, effective treatment options. And like, so we're trying to fumble around and find ways to help these people live good lives, which is like fundamentally the objective of like everything in society. Like, why do humans exist, right? As someone who doesn't believe in God or religion, I mean, like the biological reason we exist is like evolution has selected for us to exist, and we should pass on our genes essentially, right? That could be one angle. That's why we biologically, I guess, like, exist. But why do we exist in terms of morally, like what should we do in the world? What should be our goal or objective? And I think fundamentally it's to live a fulfilling life, right? To maximize the conscious experience that we have. I think that's like fundamentally the main thing. The only thing perhaps. Like that's it. We want to maximize our conscious experience. Because that's all we have. All we have is our consciousness. We have our subjective state of being. There's something that it's like to be you. And you want that something that it's like to be you to be happy. And you want that something that it's like to be you to have good experiences in the world and to live a happy and fulfilling life. And that could mean different things for different people. And also, right, we have to put some restrictions and constraints upon you as an individual, because you're interacting in a society with other people who also have a conscious experience, a unique subjective experience. And So you can't kill those other people, even if killing those other people would maximize your experience, right? So that's why we have laws to some extent. Now, also, we have bullshit laws too that don't have any purpose or are counterproductive or were implemented for bad reasons or based on bad evidence and so on and so forth. But like fundamentally, the reason you can't harm another person is because they also have a conscious subjective experience. And that's the thing that we value both in yourself and both in other people. That's why fundamentally most people in society and in the world, or at least in democratic societies, believe that people should be more or less free to live their lives, provided they're not hurting other people. Right? That's why every advanced society on Earth has more or less come to that conclusion, and they don't always perfectly implement that or perfectly live up to that, but that is like the fundamental idea. Like if you talk to people on the left wing, the right wing, libertarian, whatever, most of them, unless they're like really fringe people, are going to say like, yeah, you're an adult. You could probably do whatever you want. Like even most conservatives are probably there when it comes to like trans people, trans adults, right? Trans adults, whatever. You're an adult. You want to get surgery or whatever, like fuck, do whatever you want, man. You're an adult. Um, liberals, you want to smoke weed? Yeah, whatever. Do whatever you want. You're an adult. Like even most conservatives, like pro weed now, pro gay marriage, because they recognize that you know what, we probably shouldn't be exercising violence, which is what the state is. Um, exercising violence to stop people from smoking a plant, or exercise violence to stop two gay people from having sex, or exercise violence for to stop people from smoking cigarettes, even though cigarettes are like objectively horrible, and we should like they're an extremely terrible thing. But like, you're an adult, you want to smoke cigarettes, you're not doing it in front of kids or whatever. You're not doing it in a restaurant. Well, even in some cases, some areas that's legal too. But most of the country now, most major cities at least, you can't really smoke in restaurants because, like, okay, doing that would have an imposition on somebody else. But you want to do it at home, whatever. You're an adult, do whatever the fuck you want. And that is what we should be aiming for, right? That's maximizing individual liberty so that people can pursue the maximalization and the realization of their conscious potential. Because I think that like that's fundamentally like all we really have. And I maybe could I'm trying to think of anything else that might matter aside from consciousness. But everything that else that matters is relative to consciousness, right? If you want to say that, well, having a family is important. Well, having a family is important because having a family makes our brain happy. It makes our body happy. It improves our conscious experience. So we should care about the scientific advancement of humanity. Well, we care about the scientific advancement of humanity because the scientific advancement of humanity improves the lives and the conscious experience of humans. So it's difficult, if not impossible, to find something that we should value for reasons other than improving consciousness, either your own consciousness or the consciousness of others, or the overall consciousness of society, or the consciousness of future humans that don't exist yet but might be born in the future, or even the conscious experience of non-human creatures, right? And if you want to go down that road, we could, or maybe we should have some degree of moral concern, and maybe even a high degree of moral concern for how our actions in the world negatively impact the well-being of conscious animals, right? That our actions in the world can cause suffering, can cause negative states of being, right? Negative feelings, pain, suffering, and that there's probably good reason to think that animals possess some degree, or most animals at least. There may be exceptions. I'm not sure. Like insects, some other animals, like they may not have the parts necessary to have a conscious experience or to subjectively feel pain, for instance. or to subjectively feel pain and interpret it as pain consciously, rather. So I'm not sure about every animal, but generally speaking, we recognize, I think it's good reason to think that animals have a subjective state of being. There can be modes of being an animal that are good and bad, that are positive experiences and negative experiences, and that when we interact with animals, like we should probably try to lean more towards the positive side. And obviously, you got to defend yourself. If a bear is attacking you and you like absolutely had to fight back to save your life, and that was the only option, or even if it wasn't the only option, I think you have a moral right to defend yourself, even if there are other options. Generally speaking. But yeah, it's a complicated topic. But I think that that's more or less where I am now. That consciousness is what matters, and the primary, if not only, thing that matters. That's why we're here. Because we're not here because God made the earth in 7 days or whatever. We're not here because because of like magical reasons. We're here because, well, evolution selected for us to be here, and so we have to live the lives we're given. We didn't have a choice to be born. We didn't have a choice to exist in this world. But we do have to live in this world, and we do have to have a conscious experience in this world, and we do have to try and well, we don't have to try, but we probably should try to make that experience a positive one. Positive both on ourselves and positive on our impact with others. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
You can't just ideas a thing and be a thing.
It is a good thing to be able to analyze your own brain, to come to conclusions.
So, and again, I don't think Demon Mama, I'm trying to be very generous when I'm reading into her video, so I'm assuming she's mixing up self-diagnosis with self-awareness of symptoms. I'm going to try to be really charitable when I analyze this video so that I'm not just shitting on her the whole time. But a lot of what she says, I think, betrays a very deep misunderstanding of how just a lot of things work.
Own brain to come to conclusions.
So one of the bad things about mental illness in general is it actually can inhibit your ability to come to good conclusions about your own brain. This is why we talk to other people about like, like how we're feeling, or we try to give them a list of things like, oh, I feel this or this or this. This is why sometimes friends and family are helpful in pointing you out to a physician or saying like, hey, go to this or tell them this or whatever. This is why you can bring friends or family sometimes to an appointment and have them take you, right? The idea that you like part of like one of the biggest things in so many different mental health issues, it's not cognitive dissonance. It's a cognitive, I think it might be cognitive distortion is what I'm looking at, where, you actually like inhibited. Cognitive distortions are habitual ways of thinking that are often inaccurate and negatively biased. Cognitive distortions are like a really big part of a lot of different mental health issues, and they can actually severely inhibit your ability to draw accurate conclusions about yourself. The idea that you would tell a person with mental illness that they can accurately come to conclusions about themselves and then take a diagnosis to a doctor is actually really harmful, really damaging, and betrays, I think, a deep misunderstanding of how a lot of these things can impact the brain and impact your like cognitive wherewithal to have a good understanding about yourself or your brain or whatever.
Will some people do so poorly? Of course. Their competence is an issue across the board. People can incorrectly self-diagnose themselves. But at the end of the day, the key political takeaway is that we have to self-diagnose.
So you absolutely don't. And the scary thing, and now I'm going to attack the example that people always give as a counter to this. I was like, what about your name? Your name can be whatever you want to be. It's like, yeah, but that's your name. The name is supposed to be whatever you want it to be. But no other category of thing works that way. I think that when you've pushed self-ID a lot, then what happens is of course you can't like challenge somebody on whether or not they are trans because the qualifications for them being trans are them saying that they're trans, even though really that's not the case. Like if I ID right now as trans, that doesn't make me trans. Like the underlying fact of the matter is I'm not, or at least I don't think I am. So yeah, I think to give the argument on the other side though, because I am sympathetic towards it, is it probably feels like for a long time, if you are trans, that a lot of the people that are putting up those roadblocks in front of you to be like, we just got to be sure, they're not really trying to put up roadblocks to make sure you are trans. They just don't believe in it at all. And they're trying to make the process as confusing or difficult or as impossible as they can in order to prevent anybody from taking that treatment. So I can understand where the push from the left comes from to make it more accepting as well. Kind of like when you go to like some like abortion clinics, I think some states try to say that like they have to show you like a picture of like the fetus before you have an abortion, which whether or not you're pro or anti-abortion, like obviously the goal is to try to like make it as difficult as possible for you to actually go through with it,
I remember this was sort of my first hint that the trans shit had in many ways become a cult was right before I started my medical transition. I sought out like a support group or whatever. It was like the one in my city, and it was I think it was like corporatized as well. Like it was like one of these bigger like Stonewall like something. There's like 20 other trans people in there, and they're all sitting at a round table, and they start talking about how we really shouldn't be using terms like trans woman or trans man anymore, that it should be trans masculine and trans feminine. And you had all these people who had no intention of ever like medically transitioning.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, that reeks of like, there are fakers with like any mental health condition, any health condition in general. But for whatever reason, the fakers are like defended within the trans shit and by like leftists. I don't really understand that. You know, I did like a whole segment, and I've been getting like fucking eaten alive on Twitter. Well, not eaten alive because I'm still here. On Twitter about it, I was talking about how trans trenders have like destroyed the credibility of trans people, which is this concept of like, you know, objective self-ID, and like trans masculine is as valid as a trans man. And it's like, that to me is some fake shit. That to me is you trying to gain like the social capital of saying I'm trans, but you're not actually transitioning. And so the issue arises when like no one can say that. And then people just feel like they have to just like throw everything out with it. So then it's like, okay, then all trans people. Like I so get the all trans people perspective, and that can sound like messed up or whatever. But I genuinely think if I wasn't trans, I'd be like, all trans people. I'm so done with this because it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah. I had a big trans arc, I guess, on my stream like a year and a half ago, where I was doing a lot of trans debates, a lot of trans discourse. And I, you know, every now and then, if depending on what I'm talking about, I'll solicit from my audience, like, listen, if you're trans, if you're black, if you're a woman, whatever, like email me, like if I'm trying to get experiences, because I don't have these experiences, so I can't know. So yeah, at one point I was like, listen, if you're trans, email me, tell me what it's like, what, you know, what's going on, what am I missing, what am I not missing? And that experience that you just gave, it seems to be really common today, where when you get, I'll call them actual trans people that they have dysphoria, they're trying to transition, especially on college campuses, when they join support groups to try to figure out like, okay, well, you know, where do I go for medication? What do I want to do? Like 95% of the people are like non-binary women. That like go by Z's or pronouns. They've got septum piercings, they've got dyed hair, and maybe they wear binders, maybe. But that's all they ever want to do. That's the extent of the transition ever. And then all the conversations are just about like communism and like social issues. And it's like, if you're an actual trans person with dysphoria and you're trying to transition and you're looking to do that, those places, I don't know if they exist for you anymore. Like, it's funny, as much as people complain about like trans people destroying women's spaces, like the new trans trenders, it feels like have like legitimately destroyed trans spaces. And that because holy even if you are trans, there's no possible way that you could open like a trans space. Like, okay, guys, this is for trans people, no non-binaries, and no people that are.
That's actually a really interesting point.
Like you would get eviscerated by doing that. Yeah, and then like you said, it's become really hard then for those people. Because now, and this happens to me a lot too, because I think my positions on trans stuff are pretty reasonable, even if I disagree with some people, even if we have some disagreements, I think they're pretty reasonable. But every time I go to argue, I almost feel like I'm being disingenuous, because anytime I give trans arguments, I know that the person I'm talking to has never heard these before. If you argue against me and I'm saying things like, I think some people are trans, they probably need healthcare, we need to figure it out. What they're used to hearing is self-ID is real, any impairment whatsoever to trans healthcare is bigoted, and you have to accept all these people as their identities, even in private, you got to do blah, 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 otherwise you're a huge bigot. And this is the argument they've heard 99% of the time. So when I come and I wheel out my arguments, like, I know I can be persuasive, but at the end of the day, the other person probably doesn't feel like I'm being genuine, and I don't even blame them, because it's like, I'm probably one of like 12 people that would even say these things, because everybody else wants relentless affirmation, relentless care, relentless transition for children, and it's like, yeah. And then kind of what you said, there's like this broader problem where I've said this a lot, and I will continue to say this. Kids being radical in school is a good thing. Everybody is radical in school. Everybody who's 18 to 20, all the Vietnam protesters, I was, I'm sure you were, every motherfucker when they're 18, 19, 20 has some crazy shit that they believe.
I was a purple-haired vegan in high school.
Okay, cool. I supported Ron Paul. I was a ride or die Ron Paul fan in college, right?
Were you really?
Yeah, absolutely. Hell yeah. Abolish the Fed 2008. We watched him on TV when he won like one state, and we were like, this is it. He's going to do it. But yeah, so everybody's radical in school. That's nothing to be alarmed about, that kids are being radical. Kids are always radical. The problem now, though, is the aesthetic and the radicalness of kids. It used to be something where it's like, okay, we get it, you're goth, you're seen, you're a libertarian, whatever, you'll grow out of it, you're whatever. But you can't say that anymore, because now it's all about trans. And like the identity is unassailable. You can't say anything bad about it. You can't say, okay, you'll probably grow out of this, or you'll figure this, or whatever, because now it's like, okay, hold on. Whoa. Like, you might have said that kid was goth and he'll grow out of it. I'm not goth now, I'm trans. I'm an NB mask presenting lesbian femme with a huge dick, or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, sorry, Marla. Yeah. Oh God, everything's like so annoying. Yeah.
And here's the thing. It's like, there are studies that show, and this is, whenever you get into studies about trans shit, this is also like a huge source of frustration for me, because it is so hard to find valid numbers on trans shit. And then like on a personal level, that sucks, because like I would like to know more about like my life and my health and all this shit. But every study that comes out is always so ideologically driven. But there have been a handful of studies on like long-term follow-up on children who have gender dysphoria. And the numbers are all over the place, but it ranges somewhere between 60 and 90% growing out of it after they go through like the main stages of puberty. Mm-hmm. So that to me informs my opinion that children should not be transitioning, because I can't imagine anything worse than literally like in some cases having your genitals removed, you know, over something that would have dissipated on its own, right?
Or even having like top surgery as a woman, like getting your breast removed. That's pretty traumatic if you end up,
Then you can't feed your child, or you can't have a child in general, like for real. And then like, to me, that also, this is why, you know, I do have like leftists in my audience, and they want me so hard to.
I can't put a sunken cow or a creep cow in here. I don't know why. I guess the map is kind of glitched. Whoever put these specific, it's sad because I actually know how the map editors work. Whoever put this specifically here, or this specific terrain, it was definitely done like Starforge or something like that, where you have the squares instead of the isometric, which is a way better system. I love the square system. I love that this is something that you can do in the game. But for some reason, the creep doesn't always work. Like sometimes it'll go over the edge even. Yeah.
To drop my stance on anti-children transitioning, but it's like, for me, that stance also secures the rights of trans adults, because the idea that if your gender dysphoria is so persistent that it goes into adulthood and it beats the odds and it is still with you despite the likelihood that it will dissipate after puberty, that's a reason why you should be allowed to transition. You should be allowed to do what you want with your body. So for me, it's like they shoot themselves in the foot at every time. I think I can break it down to a few simple things that would like not only improve like sentiments towards trans people, which in my opinion are at like, not in my opinion, statistically it's true as well, such an all-time low that like even I, if I could just get a little vulnerable here for a second, get like some anxiety, like going out now, like being out in the world. I'm like, I don't know who the fuck clocking me as trans. I don't know who knows me from the internet and is going to be like associate me with like a pedophile or a predator or whatever the fuck. Like I feel that now. So if I'm feeling it, I know like the average trans person is really feeling it, because in a lot of ways I get like a fucking huge pass from like right wingers that people see as hypocritical, and I get it. I think that if we dropped the kid transitioning thing, which they would never do, but I think if they did, that would be a huge win for us. I also think that dropping the trans women in sports thing, huge win. The idea that not dating trans people makes you like bigoted, like just stop fucking saying that. And so many people that I have like respect for in the trans community say that, and I'm like, are you retarded?
I like those. At least things were simpler back then, because like back then the worst was like, if you won't date a trans person, you're bigoted, and those were like all the conversations. But it was such a minority topic, nobody cared. But now it's like, yeah, like little Timmy is 7 years old, and we need to do surgery. And I was like, Jesus, things have moved so extreme. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like I look at these, state bans on what they say is gender affirming care.
I actually like never really like listened to Blaire White before. I know that like the left hates her, but most of what she's saying here seems pretty reasonable. So,
I feel like I don't like that phrase. I think that it kind of like waters it down. I don't necessarily love the phrase the conservatives use either, which is like mutilation. But what do you think about the amount of states that are banning it for minors? And then what do you think about the states that are kind of pushing for adult bans as well?
The adult bans are completely and totally indefensible, especially from a conservative point of view. I don't know how you can ever say that like the government should be involved with cutting off this type of care from adults. But the issue from the conservative perspective is that the conservative arguments have now changed, because a lot of conservatives are completely not bought into any trans stuff now, or maybe they never were, and now this is like their bask off moment. I don't know. I like to take people where they're at. I like to say people are generally being honest. But the issue now is conservatives see it as the same thing as like, would you allow a person to go into a hospital and get their arm cut off? Right? Well, we wouldn't allow that. So why would we allow an adult trans person who's obviously deluded to go in and get any kind of surgery? So I think kind of what I was referencing earlier is conservatives don't really see it. They don't really care about trans issues when they're trying to ban trans adult care. They see it as kind of like this ideological battleground for, what does it mean to be mentally healthy? What is a woman? What is a man? And that allowing kind of trans people to exist and to access care in this manner challenges kind of those underlying paintings for how they kind of build their foundation of reality, right? That those people can exist. So, I mean, obviously, if somebody believes trans people are real, obviously I'm opposed to restricting trans healthcare for adults. Like I said, for kids, like if the therapeutic environment I feel like was more critical or more challenging, and I felt like there was good research being published there, I would probably be, just because of the political optics and where we're at in the research now, I'd probably be okay with moving trans healthcare for minors in the same direction as like the NHS or in Sweden, where they've said, listen, for any type of drug therapy, we're going to do this, we're going to continue to explore it, but it's going to be in a research setting so that we can continue to collect data on it, because holy fuck, the research is just not there yet. And anybody on either side, if a conservative tells you that they know for a fact it doesn't work, they're lying. If a progressive tells you that we know for a fact it does work, they're lying. The research is all very new stuff, and the research is not quite there yet to tell us what the correct direction is. So I'd probably be okay with it in that sense. And then you socially transition. If you want to wear a binder, if you want to wear makeup, if you want to whatever, you can do that. But again, also to go back to the beginning, this is such like a minority of a minority of a minority of the population. It's insane how much of the overall political discourse trans issues are taking up now.
Yeah, for sure. I really thought we would disagree more on like the kids transitioning thing. I mean, I'm actually pleasantly surprised, because I feel like it would just be such a net positive for everyone just to say, yeah, we're throwing that out, with the exception of, research, because I think that would benefit everyone. But the extent for which it's defended on the left, I think, does so much fucking harm. Like when I look at like Target, we mentioned that earlier, when I look at Bud Light, when I look at how radioactive it is now becoming to be publicly supportive of LGBT people, and I see that blame is placed solely on like conservatives, I just don't see that. Like I don't see that that's a rational observation of what's happening. I see it more like a fucking chihuahua that's like biting at a pit bull for years and years and years, and the pit bull finally bites, and everyone's like, see, this confirms everything we always thought about conservatives. Not to say, obviously, people often accuse me of like, being friends with people who secretly hate me. Oh, Alex Jones hates you, Joe Rogan hates you, all these conservatives hate you. I'm fully aware tons of conservatives fucking hate me. Not the ones I just listed, but do you see it as like, which side right now in 2023 is doing more harm, do you think, in trans acceptance, LGBT acceptance? Because I see things getting very fucking hateful, genuinely.
Well, first, I have to stake my position here. To be clear, if we had good research and if we could, like, with a certain percentage confidence, identify trans kids, I'm okay with.
Okay, it's been a long time, as in like maybe like 10, 15 years since I've played Sunken Defense, any version of Sunken Defense. But yeah, clearly my defense was not great. I set it up more as like pathing. I figured I can try and like trap a bunch of them in here, but also create an exit so they funnel through slowly, one at a time, while most of them get stuck in here, but not so stuck that they immediately attack the structures, and then like funnel them through like a path. But yeah, no, the units do way more damage than the sunken colonies do. But I'm only like half playing. I mean, I'm playing it, but I'm also focused on this stream. I wish I would have paid more attention though to the damage being done by the units versus the sunkens.
Trans kids being on puberty blockers. I wouldn't say sex reassignment surgery for people under the age of 18, but I am okay with like people going through puberty, taking puberty blockers if we could identify with high reliability who they were. Let me just take that out clearly. In terms of who is more to blame, in my opinion, politics feels like a game of reactionary versus reactionary. In that what happens is somebody will take a side, and because they don't like it, they go as far to the other side as possible, and then the other side will go as far to the other side as possible. And what happens is people continue to provide further justifications for each other down the line. So right now, when trans people initially were like, I don't think conservatives don't think trans people are real. We need to fight for this as much as possible for adults to get healthcare. A lot of conservatives fought against that. A lot they didn't want to give trans people any healthcare, and now trans people got their stuff. And now, as trans people have gotten their stuff, as they've moved further left and they're fighting.
Yeah, right now, I don't think I'm gonna get too many more kills. So I might not get more civilians, which means I can't get more units. So I might be a bit fucked, but the team is kind of depending on me to do a fuck ton of damage, especially red over here. So I'll stick around. But yeah, now I know in the future though how to play it.
Fighting over like kids. Now conservatives are coming back like, if conservatives would just come back and they would say, hold on, sure, trans people are real, we don't like it, whatever. Adults are fine, leave the kids alone. Then okay, that would, whatever, fine. We can fight on that battleground, but that's not where conservatives are. Now conservatives are like, transgenderism is an ideology that is rotting society, and we need to destroy all of it. Well, with a lot of conservatives pushing that, now people on the left are, understandably, they're going to say like, well, look, we told you the whole time. It's not about the kids. It's about trans issues altogether. Conservatives really do want to get rid of all trans issues, so we need to fight even harder than before for everything. And then now conservatives are like, oh, well, look, they are defending 4-year-old shit. We told you they wanted to come for your kids. Now we need to get rid of all this LGBT shit. And that's like, it's both sides. Like, and it's like I had a little sister. It's like two siblings fighting, where, I don't know if you had any siblings, but the goal is to always like trigger your sibling, like right up to the point where they go and tattle to mom and dad. And then you're like, no, don't do this. You can hit me too. It's okay. But like, that's what it feels like. It's like two siblings fighting back and forth, trying to trigger each other into the abyss on both sides. And yeah, so like, it's always hard to say like, who do I blame? A lot of those emails, like I said, from those older people, I understand more, where they're like, listen, you go on Twitter and you see these insane fucking trans people. This is the craziest thing. Well, what were you like in 2010 when you were on Reddit talking about atheism? I don't know if you were part of that group of people. I was. And back then we all tipped our fedoras, as much as we could. Religious people, they're the bane of society and blah, blah, blah. Because why? Because we grew up in Christian families being forced to go to church every Sunday with families that weren't even that religious, and we don't care about it. So of course, when you get to your college years, you're like, fuck religious people. I'm gonna tell them how much I hate them. And for trans people, a lot of that is the same. But we've lost the ability to just say, kids are being crazy. Let's have a reasonable conversation about this. And now both sides of the political aisle are just defined by the most reactionary position they can take against the other side that's just triggering the ever-living fuck out of them. So if I had to blame a side, I would say the problem is the internet right now, because social media has just blown everything out of control, and all the conversations are being held on TikTok and Twitter by people that haven't even had real jobs yet. That's the issue right now, I think. But
agreed about the internet. To me, it's like the vegan effect, right? It's like you look at like veganism as a movement, and if anyone is being honest or actually looking at like the people within the movement and the ideology behind it. It's like, you can find, even if you are not vegan, even if you're one of these fucking I love meat people, you can look at some of their shit and be like, they had a fucking point. It's like, wow, the pigs really are fucking treated badly. Wow, it might be better for the environment if people ate 10% less meat. But it's like the methods in which they go about it push everyone away. And that's what I see happening with the trans shit too. And I'm not sure how like reversible that is, because to me, the trajectory with like the vegan shit, even though perhaps it's not like a perfect comparison or analogy, it's like, people were really, if you also remember, speaking of like the atheism era, there was also like a really strong like anti-veganism like era like on social media. And it's like, once that,
it's like, for every one steak you don't eat, I'll eat 3 or whatever, like shit like that. Yeah.
But then like once that was over, people just didn't care anymore. But then like veganism as a movement was just left destroyed. And it's like, that's what I see now. It's like, they're just going to like destroy the fucking trans movement. And it's like, but the difference is like veganism is a choice and like being an actual transsexual isn't. And it's like, these are real people. It's just fucking, it's fucked. I mean, for me, it's like, I see corporations like a huge problem too. You know, it's like, in a better climate, maybe.
Did I fuck up the pathing? I know that they're only supposed to attack if they have no other way to get through. But I guess this hole here was too small, which triggered some of them like to go to a frenzy and just fucking the AI to, because they're probably being ordered to move, or no. They're either being ordered to move, attack, or patrol to destination. And I'm probably listed as like something like not an ally, but not hostile either. So they're not supposed to attack in terms of the AI pathing. I actually know a lot about StarCraft map making and things like that. I used to play around with it. Never really made like anything like too hardcore or anything, but I played around with it. So I know like the trigger system. So they're not supposed to attack like that unless they have no other way. So I must have right here. I must have made that too small. The Ultralisks couldn't fit in. And so they just went wild. I lost my Goliath too, which is like probably the main thing that was killing things.
Putting Dylan Mulvaney with the Bud Light shit wouldn't have done anything, but like maybe pick your people better. Like I agree with libs when they say like representation matters, and so I have a hard time understanding why they pick the worst fucking representatives at every turn. I'm like,
why are you saying building statues of George Floyd to represent the entire BLM movement wasn't a good idea? Right? No, yeah, I know, yeah, it's really, really dumb. Yeah, but then in their mind, like optics doesn't matter as long as, and this is an issue that I feel with progressives a lot, is like the optics, the argumentation, none of that matters because we have the moral authority, so we'll conduct ourselves in whatever way we see fit. And if you disagree, it's because you're a bigot. And it's like, okay, well, that's your.
I'll let him finish his statement.
Ideology. If that's your methodology, then of course you're not going to try to justify yourself or care about.
All right, but there's one more thing I want to watch and probably get out of here.